John Saul, so he won't have to say it himself, although he tells everybody in the world. John is the only contributor to the Register still alive, or ever. So we can hardly do it without still being alive. Who has published, who has published in all 6 decades of the Register. Now you may think 50 years, how do you get to 6 decades? But he's figured this out. 1969 was his first essay with Giovanni Arrighi. And last year, his brilliant essay on whatever happened to the South African liberation was his last of many articles. He won in every decade, at least, actually, more than he won in. So John is next.
I want to begin by laying to rest the rumor that I'm 110 years old. We're just at another 50th anniversary party, many of us, in London for the 50th anniversary of the Register. And this was an exciting event as well, as seeing you all here today. And this was an event that took place in London, not far from the School of Oriental and African Studies, where the Historical Materialism Group was having their conference, where several people spoke, and which Leo and Sam were honored by receiving the Deutscher Award for this year for their book on American capitalism. So it was a very exciting time. And I was brought back to remember that 50 years before, I had actually been a student at SOAS, studying Swahili language and various other things on my way to my first African site of study and struggle, which is in Tanzania, where I stayed for 7 years. But the interesting thing for me at that moment about was that it was the Register's 50th anniversary. And I recall that during the years that I was at SOAS, I also went down to several blocks down the street to the London School of Economics and took several courses, one with Ralph Miliband. And he was a very important teacher of mine, but it was also in 1964 that the very first issue of the Socialist Register came out when I was in his class. Now, I had nothing to do with that issue of the Register other than to be a recipient and one of the first purchasers of the Socialist Register. It was 50 years ago, and it was the very first issue. It was only several years later, I think in 1969, that Ralph, who by that time was a friend as well as my professor, got in touch with me in Tanzania and asked if Giovanni Arrighi and I could do a piece on the nature of revolution and nationalism in Africa. So we did, and we've been in the Register, as Leo said, ever since. In fact, he's stolen my punchline in a way, because I was going to say that I'm the only person who can actually and actuarially be in the Socialist Register every decade, and it's true. And if I'm not 110, and I might live that long, I could actually be in a few more decades, right? So you got something to look forward to. But as I said also at the time, I wanted to thank Leo and Greg and others for having me over to London for that event, and I'm very pleased as well to be here today. In London, we met with Marion Kozak, who was there, Ralph Miliband's widow, and it was a very exciting. Fred was there, and several others from the group of the Register, and we had a wonderful time. And I was able to say there, because of course, as many of you know, the Daily Mirror has been carrying on an attack on the Miliband sons through the shade of Ralph Miliband. And I was able to testify that indeed Ralph Miliband was a revolutionary and a socialist. And the Daily Mirror, for once, had got it absolutely right. I won't say anything about the son, that's another question altogether. But it was kind of fun, and I'm very pleased to be back here today celebrating the same Register that I've been involved with for all these years, more as a spear carrier than an actual wielder of the spear, but I've had a few good chances to get in on the action as well. And I think I think we should also be saluting the historical tenacity of people like Leo and Colin and Greg, who brought us to this 50th anniversary. I mean, John Saville and Ralph Miliband started it all, but as Leo said, at certain points the future of the Register was in doubt. And it took a lot of hard work on his part in particular, but on the part of others as well, to keep the flag flying and to bring us here to the 50th anniversary. Now, I should also say personally that though I've been around for a long time with the Register, and I'm very proud to have been so, I'm one of the more obstreperous Socialist Register loyalists over the years. I haven't always seen entirely eye to eye with the high brain trust that guides the register. And I've often been inclined to take the claims of gender analysis and environmental struggles as important as class analysis and class struggles. And the same is true of national and religious assertions, democratic resistances to political authoritarianism, and also the crucial importance, especially in the global south, of the role of the precariat as being at least as important as the proletariat in bearing in struggle, revolutionary and socialist promise. Indeed, I have elevated all of the above foci to at least set equal centrality with my kind of postmodern, as some may fear it to be, multivariate Marxism. Though I insist I'm not a postmodernist, or even a Bavarian. I'm a Socialist Register Marxist, you know. And I'm proud to say that the Register has been a movie itself, always encouraging myself and others like me to publish in its pages and to push the envelope of inquiry of these and other matters forward, never more expansively as any good Marxist must, and as any socialist project should. Indeed, just last year in Socialist Register 49, I deployed positively the concept of the precariat to help capture, non-reductively, the pairing in current left discourse in South Africa of, I quote, the working class and the poor, as joint forces for a renewed struggle for equality and justice in a much troubled country. Troubled despite its much celebrated liberation almost precisely 20 years ago as a new South Africa. Now in the current issue, we find my friend Brian Palmer denouncing the concept of the precariat. Not specifically me, I don't think, but he's actually attacking a Guy Standing version of the precariat. But he does attack the concept of precariat more or less root and branch as a reflection from our ideological clarity in struggling for socialism. Indeed, he titles his article, Reconsiderations of Class, Precariousness as Proletarianization. Whereas mine might well have been entitled, this is the one the year before, Reconsideration of Class in South Africa, Precariousness and Proletarianization. Because I believe that a very large number of the so-called dangerous class never really become proletarianized in any meaningful degree, although they are certainly oppressed and potentially revolutionary. There's a whole debate to be had here, and this is not the place to do it, but I think there are questions to be raised.
But you're doing it.
But you've already spoken, so you're on this particular theme, I get the last word. Of course, and this is the point I wanted to make in drawing this to your attention, is despite such differences of emphasis, we're both struggling for socialism, as all of us on the Socialist Register, and most people I'm sure in the audience are doing, for socialism and for a much more real democracy than we as yet know. In fact, it's on that basis that we invite everyone to read these such warring articles, and many others in the Register last year, this year, and next year, and decide for yourself. That's what the Register is there for, after all, for a struggle, intellectual and practical, that continues amongst comrades to ensure our greater clarity and efficacy, and against those others who stand for something very different indeed, and also against a capitalism that is ever more powerful, politically and especially, I feel, culturally, and also ever more a failure, both economically and humanly. Meanwhile, let me conclude here by saying that I'm personally very proud to have had a small role to play in the Register team for 50 years, and as I warned Leo and Greg in London, while I can't claim that I'll be around for the 100th anniversary of the Register, I do hope that I'll be around till 2020, so I can take a shot at registering as a 7-decade man in the pages of the Socialist Register. Keep your eyes open for that. But more importantly, more generally, let us join with you in registering the various socialist advances we must yet make to permit social democracy, post-Rob Ford, post-Stephen Harper, post-John Cherry, post-Peter Monk, to flourish in this country and beyond. Thank you very much.